Shinkansen Zero-Kei. This is a game for 1 to 4 players. It is a competitive game with a solitaire option in which you will be playing against a bot. And in this game, we are in Japan in the 1950s and 60s, and you'll be building railroads, you'll be building your own train. But ultimately, you will be selecting actions, trying to create an efficient resource engine, and you'll try to score as many points as possible. That is the ultimate idea, of course. Here we have the board of the game. It looks really nice and colorful, and we have these sections here where we place these tracks. They're face down at the beginning of the game, and you will spend actions first to prepare the ground, so you remove this track from here. Then you spend other actions to lay tracks, and also you can spend actions to build stations, and that's going to be one of the many things that gives you points in this game. Now, the game lasts 5 turns, and each turn is defined by an event card that you place there at the beginning of the game. And here I set up the game for 2 players. The combination of different colors or cards there changes depending on the number of players. So those cards will tell you top to bottom the cost and reward for laying tracks in the current round. So it says C there, F, A. When you're playing around, you place a marker here depending on that letter. So turn 1 is C. That means the lane track costs 2 yen and gives you 3 victory points. In the round 4, around with the F letter on its event card, then lane tracks are a lot more expensive, but also gives you more victory points. Then that card also tells you the number of actions that each player has available. 3 this round, 5, 4, and so on. Oopsie daisy. And each card also has a specific action. This action will be available only this round. This other action will be available the next round, and so on and so forth. You play for 5 rounds, and you have final scoring. And then you see who wins the game. Here we have an area where we place train cards that players will acquire during the game. So the first thing that you do each turn is, well, you prepare the round. Then players will have their own token, and in player order, they will commit to acquire a certain card. When you acquire a card, when you commit to acquire a card, you need to pay a cost. The cost in yen is indicated there. If and each card corresponds to a city. If that city has already been connected with tracks, it's a city already has tracks, then it is more expensive. Some cards have 2 cities. If those cities both have tracks, then it's even more expensive. There's an extra cost indicated there. Then you see under the cost, each train card has a symbol of 1 of 3 colors: white, black, or gold. When you acquire a card, or in any case, when you trigger any effect that has that symbol, and there are many that have it, you simply advance the corresponding token on that track. Suppose that 2 players have acquired a card with the white token there, then you move that by 2. And so during the game, a lot of these effects will cause these tokens to move and have a little bit of a race here. This is important because at the end of the game, the value of the stations on the board will be based on the position of these tokens. At the end of the game, basically, you finish the race, and the token that was the most advanced goes there in the 6th slot, and then 3 and 1. And so everybody who has a train that goes to a station, that goes to an area that has track and a black station would score 6 points. Everybody who has a train that goes to a place that has tracks and a white station, 3 points in this example. So, but we were here, players have committed to buying cards, and now after they do that, they will take the cards and resolve their turn here from left to right. That means that this is where the turn order may change, because first when you place them is the turn order of the previous round. Suppose that green went first and then red went first, but now when we take the cards and resolve the rest of the turn, now red goes first. Also, when you take your card and you get back your round, your turn, your order, your turn, round, order, turn, I'm getting confused. When you get your choo-choo train back, you place it on one of these slots here, and that gives you a reward, such as pulling one of those tokens on that track, pushing it forward, getting a yen, getting a victory point, and then also the placement determines the order, of course, for next turn. So the order can change pretty fast. So we did all of these extra steps, or not extra, just steps. For what? For what, you ask? Oh, that's a very legitimate question, because remember, I got this card. Hooray! When you get a card, you add it to your train. We all start with 2 cards, so one indicating the head of the train and the other one the caboose, and we place it there. Later, when you get multiple cards, you move all of your cards on the train to the left, with the exception of the last one, and that is where you add the next one. And so maybe that's how it will look after a couple of turns. So your train will become longer as you go. After you add your card to the train, it's time to take actions. Remember, the number is indicated there. So in this round, for example, each player only has 3 actions. And you have these tokens, they're really cool actually, to indicate the actions that you have already taken. Because usually you can take an action, each action is indicated here on a slot, on one of these icon slots. Each action can be taken only once unless you have an effect that lets you break that rule. For example, if I spend that action there, then I get to build a station. I spend 3 yen, I take a station. Depending on which I take, I score a number of victory points right away. So if I take the top one of a color, it collects 6 points, 4, 2, and 1. I take it and I place it somewhere. I don't necessarily have to place it in an area that has tracks yet. If I'm using an action that has a cost there, then I need to spend that cost in yen. So for example, I'm able to use that one. And the action there is to prepare the ground. It is when you take this token and you place it on your train to be built later as tracks. You can also use other people's actions, but in which case then you're paying them. And suppose that I spend that to build that track that I just did there. Also, preparing ground gives me victory points, for example. A lot of things give you victory points. Now, other actions that you can take. We talked about building actions. You can collect extra cards, collect money, move those station tokens we saw earlier. And then there are actions for Olympic cauldrons, which is you place one of your Olympic cauldrons on one of those spaces. As you can see, there are random tokens placed there. So in each game, 3 different stations, 3 different locations will be Olympic locations, and you place one of your cauldrons there. There's an element of area majority here, because the player who has majority in an area at the end of the game gets to score that city. And also, as you place a cauldron there, you collect the corresponding advantage, such as collecting money, spending a yen to get victory points, or moving a train card on your train, because you will score more points at the end of the game if your stations are in the correct order. Suppose, for example, that now I'm buying a card with a station number 2, and so the card would go there. It scores me more points if the 2 is between the 1 and the 3. And so I can use that action there on that Olympic cauldron. Cauldron allows me to move a card on my train. And that's why I'm going to do that now. So that will score me more points. All right, that's the general idea. Spend your actions, performing actions basically, spending these tokens and marking the actions on the board. Collect points, prepare the tracks, build stations, get actions and resources through the Olympic cauldron. And that's the general idea. At the end of the game, so by then, before the end of the game, you should have scored a bunch of points. At the end of the game, you get to score points looking at the stations, at the cities here. Now, if the city that you have does not even have a track, that's embarrassing, then you lose 3 victory points. So by getting these stations on your train, you're also committing to actually delivering people there. If a station you have in your train at the end of the game has a track but not a station, then it's 0 victory points, no penalty and no reward. If a station you have in your train at the end of the game has tracks and also has a station there, then that scores you 3 victory points. Then you also score the longest line of stations on your train, in this case would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that actually is also matched by a line of tracks and station on the board. That's a tricky concept, but the idea would be that right now on my train, I have stations that go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the board, 1, 2, 3 match what I have, and then there's a break here, and so I get to score that section of my train because it's on the board. And it's so basically for the longest connected line of stations on your train, match by connected tracks and stations on the board, you score 3 victory points for each such station. Which is almost like, oh my god, it just takes so long to understand what that means. Is it really worth it? It kind of is, though. And then again, we look at majority here, and players that have majority of cauldrons in an area, they get to score the corresponding city, exactly like they would if it was on their train, which means also, if you're not careful, you're going to get to score a penalty. Because remember, some of those stations will give you penalties. The game can be played 1 to 4. I played it against a human opponent, so 2 players. Then I played it solo two-handed, and I also played solo legit with the actual AI. And I didn't feel any need to go above 2 players. I think there could be some interesting interactions there, maybe negotiation. Hey, if you build that thing, then I can do this other thing for you, etc., 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 with more than 2 players. But again, I didn't feel any need for that because I already felt that with 2 players the game can be prone to analysis paralysis because there is just a lot of stuff that you want to take into account. Those 5 actions are super important. The economy is tight. You don't get to take so many actions throughout the game. It's 5 turns, and maybe a turn you get 3 actions, so you really can't waste any actions. There is a lot of pressure there in making sure that you build the right things. You're going to find yourself stuck without resources to do something that you wanted to do. And during the player's turns, there's absolutely nothing to do for you other than sitting there and waiting for them to be done. You may get some coins if they use your actions from your train, but other than that, not much there. And so I thought it was okay to wait until my friend is done, and then I make them wait until I'm done. I don't think I would want to play this game with 3 or 4 players. Playing it against the AI, that I think it's a decent AI. That's at least is very smooth, meaning you don't have to do a lot of things for the AI, and that's what I want from an AI over a Eurogame especially. I just want them to collect points and reduce my chances of doing stuff. I don't need to simulate all their process. And they build stuff and they collect stuff, but ultimately the AI is pretty easy to defeat. You really need to go all the way, I think, into the super mega advanced stuff for the AI to present a challenge. But with the AI, at least you don't have the problem of analysis paralysis or waiting for somebody else. In general, this game was not particularly exciting to me. It had this problem that I found that falls somewhere in between 2 different categories. It is too complicated, too fiddly in particular for a game that is ultimately fairly light and doesn't have a huge range of decisions. I would say it's as fiddly as almost like a heavy or a mid-weight game while having the gameplay of a light game. And so that's right there, that's a problem. The fact that costs, when you buy something, there are so many modifications. Okay, this is the standard cost, but I need to give you money because of that. But there's that modification based on that. I get the discount based on that thing. Oh, wait a second, that gives me a victory point here, victory point there. Since many costs and many rewards are modified, basically there isn't like a one-stop shop place where you get all of the information. You have to look around different components. Okay, that car plus the modifier, where's the modifier, is there on the board, da 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 da. So you end up forgetting stuff, and probably, which is not great for a game with this economy, you're probably gonna end up missing some money that you owe or that you should collect, some victory points here and there, and it's just annoying. Again, especially when you're looking at the turn structure is fairly elaborate. Again, return order changing several times possibly. It's fairly elaborate for ultimately the main actions. I'm going to collect money, build, prepare the ground, lay track, and build a station and go to the cauldrons. It feels like you don't have many more of a decision tree, say, than with Splendor, but you have several times the amount of rules and the amount of modifiers. So it feels like it's not like too much work. I play games that last a lot longer, require a lot more effort, but I don't know that it's worth this kind of design. I think it would work a lot better if there was something else to do during other players' turns, so that you don't have that problem of being disengaged. But most important, it's in this game could have been streamlined more and made a little simpler. If the general idea is a light Euro game, which at the core this is what it is, I think it just has too many steps, too many little thingy things that you had to worry about for the game to be truly compelling. So it's not a bad game. The general idea seems interesting and solid to me, but it is implemented through just too many little procedures to be worth it. By the time you really get into the general idea and you really have your engine ready, the game is already over, because actually it's pretty quick. But again, you went through so many little steps, then it just doesn't feel fully worth it. There are just other games with this profile in terms of complexity that have deeper gameplay, or that have this amount of gameplay and they're basically fillers. I almost feel like it's almost a filler in the overcomplicated body of a mid-weight Euro game. And this is my assessment of Shinkansen Zero-Kei.